Hello, everybody. Cheyenne here, also known as the Dragonfly. Thank you for being a part of this reading session again. We're in chapter 2. It is September the 13th at 11 a.m. And I know Rhonda's out there. Hello, Rhonda. I hope you can hear me just fine. I'm not wearing my headset this time. I'm doing a test, so I hope you all can hear me. Um, it's a beautiful day out there. I have my door open again, so I hope the fighter jets don't fly over and disturb us. But I do live by the Fresno Air Base, so it's kind of a uncontrolled thing. Um, I'm grateful for their service. So when we last met, we were diving into chapter 2, and we were at the part where I was telling you all about how much fun my grandma was in Exeter, um, how much she would spoil me with all of these toys and games and play with me. So that was a treat. And then now we're going to get into some not so fun things to talk about with my grandfather because he was a very evil man. Um, so we're on page 43 of chapter 2. And I want to just reiterate what's in the chat. Welcome to my podcast, Dragonfly Discussions. You are welcome to enter your name and the location where you're from. I'd love to know where people are from that are watching. I'm thrilled to have you be listening, and I hope you enjoy this session together. Also, a safe space reminder, please use your own safe space parameters amongst the chapters I read, which may arouse emotions or memories of your own. So you are welcome to excuse yourself or stay, but just know that some of the things that I talk about might make you uncomfortable, might arouse memories of your own that you're not ready to deal with, and that's fine. But stay or leave, whatever you feel comfortable. But you are welcome. Either way. Okay, so we're gonna start where my morning routine at my grandparents' house in Exeter was to wake up and go to the living room, sit on the couch, and have my cereal or whatever my grandma would prepare for me. And to my right in the recliner would be my grandfather, who started drinking at the crack of dawn. All right. So as I would sit there, the stench and smoke of Leroy's cigarettes, that's my grandfather, Leroy, would waft towards my face inevitably, and I hated it. I would constantly watch the smoke that lingered through the air, taking in what clean air I had left. It would just fill the air. I would always wave it away from my face when one day Leroy said to me, "Don't you know that smoke follows ugly people?" To which my grandmother would respond with, "Oh, honey, that's not true." So, yeah, right away when I was young, my grandfather would verbally abuse me and tell me that his cigarette smoke followed me because I was ugly. And that, that definitely hurt. Um, so, my grandmother would say, "That's not true. The saying goes like this: smoke follows beauty," which I guess that is somewhat the saying. Um, that smoke follows beauty. So, she tried to get me to latch on to that. But little did she know how his ugly words always sank deeper into my conscience than her sweet words. Leroy would always be jealous of the time my grandmother spent with me. He would sometimes even come in while I was in the bathtub at night to use the toilet. He would try to expose himself to me and continue to look at my body while I would turn away in embarrassment and fear. I remember how there were multiple posters of naked women all over the walls of their bedroom. He would often fondle my grandmother right in front of me, forcing her to enjoy it. So yeah, he was pretty sick. There was just these random naked photos of women with their breasts showing and in poses that weren't appropriate for a child. And then he was always trying to grab her and touch her and grab her breasts and fondle her in front of everyone. And of course, she didn't like it, but what little power did she really have with this man that she was stuck with? The worst of the worst was when one night Leroy had pointed a shotgun at my grandmother's head, right in front of me. So my grandfather drank all day, drank from the morning till night. And by the time night, and it was just beer, but still, um, by the time nighttime came, he was a totally different person, and he liked guns. And he would get the loaded shotgun out, and this was his time to play and make us be afraid. So please bear with your own safe space going through this with me. It's not easy to even read. Um, so the shotgun's at my grandmother's head, right? She was screaming and crying, which made me cry. Leroy, who had gotten very drunk, began to beat my grandmother. She yelled at me to go into the bedroom, so I did. It seemed like hours had passed by, and all I could hear was what sounded like my grandmother being slammed across the walls of the living room. I would find shelter in the dark bedroom and cry in fear. Then I would fall asleep only to tiptoe out the door the next morning, not sure what to expect. "Oh, good morning. Can I make you breakfast?" is what my grandmother would say. And just like that, it was like nothing had ever happened. Leroy used to like old cars and taking long rides in the country. So, yeah, we would evidently, the night of horror just before didn't exist, and we're all pretending it's a good morning. Um, so, uh, my grandfather Leroy also liked old cars, and he had a bunch of old cars. He had like a Model A, he had a Model T, he had these old Fords. It was really neat, these old cars, and he liked to take drives in these old cars. So he liked to take long rides in the country. When I would visit, we would sometimes go for rides. My grandmother would sit up front with me, in the back, along with the ice chest. She would reach back to fetch an ice cold beer for Leroy frequently and put the empty bottle in a bag. I would often help her get the beer because it was quite a reach for her. So I'd be in the back seat. She and him are in the front. He's driving, drinking and driving, and she couldn't really reach the ice chest. So a lot of times I would give it to her. She'd pop it open, give me the empty. I'd put it in the bag, and I'm like, 7, 8, 9 years old. I would often help her get beer because it was quite a reach. As I mentioned, Leroy used to smoke. Well, he did smoke. He's used to because he's passed, but as I mentioned, Leroy smoked. He would smoke almost 3 packs a day. Like, this guy nonstop smoked. While on the drive, he would light up his cigarette with the car windows up. I would ask him if he could please roll the windows down because I couldn't breathe. He would say, sure, and only crack it only a bit. So little bit of air would come through the sliver of an opening. He was that much of a jerk. I'm a child, and he doesn't even let the windows down and air out the car. And to this day, I cannot stand cigarettes or cigarette smoke. I can't be around it. I can smell it like the back of my hand. I can smell it from a mile away. I'm like, I can't stand cigarettes. And I used to smoke when I was a drug addict, but it only went with my drugs. But if somebody is a smoker, I won't date them. I try to stay out of their way. I won't go around when they're smoking. I don't like being in smokers' cars. When I go into people's houses and they smoke cigarette, I can tell right away, and it bothers me. So I have a lot of, I guess, trauma or whatever effects because of cigarette smoke. I hate it. I just hate it. I hate it. So I would start choking in the back seat, and no one would know because Leroy used to like things quiet, and he certainly didn't care. He would often get annoyed if any draft came through, forcing my grandmother and me to find the leak and stop it during some car rides. I think it was during those times that I learned to stay quiet, not to say anything, and pretend that it was all going to be okay. All the things that Leroy, my grandfather, did to me during those years were ultimately what caused me to build up insecurities and fears in the future. And this is still residual in my life. The effects of what my grandfather did to me is still residual. In some ways, I don't like any kind of air coming through the windows. Um, but part of why I care is because I have the AC on. But, you know, I have that effect where if I hear an air, I can hear air escaping in the car like that. And there's things like cigarette smoke. Um, the times he would peek on me in the bathroom, um, the bathroom light would always be off. And you would go into that bathroom really dark because in the middle of the night you didn't want to turn the light. So I still have a little bit of going into bathrooms during the dark because I didn't want to wake him up or turn on the light to wake him up. So there's a lot of residual effects that my grandfather did to me that I recognize, that I'm still processing and dealing with. Um, so um, a lot of that, like a lot of that, what he did to me impacted me in a great way. And I overcome it pretty much every day. Um, I will often say that verbal abuse is worse than physical abuse. The emotional, mental, verbal abuse, I think that is more damaging than physical abuse. Physical abuse, yes, is horrible, but the physical bruises go away. The mental trauma from mental abuse, psychological abuse, verbal abuse never really goes away, honestly. I don't think it really ever goes away. You just learn to live with it and not let it control you. And know that you're loved, people love you, you're beautiful, you're all these good things and not the bad that people tried to put upon you. So this is a hard subject, Lucky the dog. This is a hard chapter. My grandparents' house in Exeter was like a small farmhouse in the city. It really was. It was an old shack of a house that looked like it was about to topple over at any moment. In the front were all of my grandmother's many, many statues. So in her yard, she had tons of statues, which she moved every time she had to mow the lawn. And she mowed the lawn, not my grandfather. She always had a strong love for statues, like angels. There'd be like angel statues. There'd be like frogs. There'd be birds. There'd be dogs, cats, turtles. A lot of tall, like angel type statues, though. She had them everywhere. In the back, it seemed like a farm to me. They had dogs, cats, chickens, roosters, horses, goats, birds, and pot-belly pigs. We had like 2 or 3 big pot-belly pigs. Huge. And they would come inside the house. I used to love every bit of it. I think my love for animals was established there. I could never wait to start playing with all my animal pals. Yeah, it was pretty neat having a farm. I would pet and groom the horses, as well as feed all the animals with the help of my grandmother. So we'd go out in the morning and she'd do her morning feeding routine when I was visiting with her. And we'd go out there and we'd feed the horses and we'd say good morning to everybody and the chickens and the roosters. And first the roosters would already be, crowing at the crack of dawn, which was neat. I always liked that as well. It was just like clockwork, So I would pet and groom the horses as well as feed the animals. I would laugh watching the chickens and pigs. I would play on the swing set and pretend that I was Snow White with all her animal friends. I would sing to them sometimes too. They always made me smile, and it felt like I made them smile too. We were all in an environment that we didn't ask to be in, but we made the best of it. Like the animals didn't have the best room to roam. They weren't fed very well. They were kind of skinny. The poop wasn't picked up a whole lot. The conditions were just they were somewhat neglected in a way. They were loved, but they could have been given proper care. They were loved in the best way they could be loved for that situation with my grandparents. Um, when I would play outside alone, sometimes I would hear the neighbor come out and yell at his dog aggressively. Then I would hear yelps from his dog and knew what that meant. So I'd be outside playing, and the next door neighbor, I think his name was David, and he would go out and he'd beat his dog. The owner would yell and beat the dog for minutes, then go back inside, and then there would be only silence. I would always walk up to the fence, peek through the holes, and try to see the dog. Sorry, this is hard. He was a beautiful white husky with big blue eyes and was chained to a tree. I could see that his doghouse was far from him. His food and water bowls were also unattended. That made me sad as a child. And over the years, I grew to form a relationship with this dog. One day I asked my grandmother what his name was. She told me it was Lucky. I thought to myself, how ironic. It was like the universe was playing a cruel joke on this dog. Like, he wasn't lucky. It was weird. Yeah. So every day from that moment onwards, whenever I visited my grandmother, I would always visit Lucky too. I would call out his name, and through the fence, I could see him jump up with excitement. He used to love my voice. I would talk to him, letting him know how beautiful he was and how much I loved him. Sometimes I was also lucky enough to touch his nose and feed his fur through the wooden fence. Sometimes his owner had left him off his chain, but we would mostly bond while he was chained up. His chain barely allowed him to be able to reach me by the fence. I had known that Lucky could feel my presence and that I possibly brought him love and happiness in some small way. Years slipped away and Lucky passed on. My heart broke the weekend that I went to visit and didn't see Lucky around. My grandmother had told me that he had passed away. So may you be resting in doggy heaven, Lucky. He was a good dog. He was like this white, he was like a husky. I think I said it. Yeah, he was a white husky, and he was beautiful, but he was dirty because the owner didn't take care of him, and so he laid in the dirt, never was bathed or, groomed or really touched at all. So that was sad. So now we're on page 47, Struggles in School. Visits to see my grandparents became less frequent as I grew older, reaching high school. However, the damage had already been done. So I've been visiting my grandparents and going through all this trauma and abuse from 5 till 12, 13 years old, because you're about that age when you go into high school. So that's a long time. However, the damage had already been done. Throughout grammar school, I struggled academically. I couldn't spell, and I didn't know how to tell time or do basic math. I was hyper and distracted through school, having a hard time focusing. So I really struggled in school a lot through those years of all that trauma. I was always afraid that Debbie or a man would come and kidnap me for sale while playing out in the schoolyard. So I think I talked about this. Children were being abducted. They were being sold. They were being trafficked back in the 80s. It was a really bad time, and it was scary. Drug addicts, like my mother, were stealing their own children and selling them for drugs. So I didn't know, I didn't know. It was really scary. So I stayed kind of on the inside of the yard. I didn't go around the fence parameter too much, um, because I was scared a lot. I didn't know. I didn't know if she was going to show up or some bad man was going to show up and take me. I had endured so much chaos on the weekends that when I returned to school during the week, I couldn't function properly. But I never told anyone about why I was struggling so much. I don't think anyone truly knew or had an idea about what was going on with me. I believe that my parents had thought it was just a learning curve. How could I share it all with anyone? I was sure that no one would believe me. I had felt so different anyway. I just wanted to fit in. So I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to pretend like it didn't exist. I just wanted to go back to like my normal life during the week and try to have a normal life and some peace and balance. My parents had worked endlessly with me night after night at the dining room table, going over lessons and basic math. Thankfully, so my dad worked with me tirelessly, like every night. My stepmom did too. But it was a lot. My dad. Um, then my parents got me on phonics, which back then was an important step in a child's development. When I got on phonics, I excelled. I easily grasped words, vowels, and spelling. I was able to tell time on a clock using the hands, and I even got better at math. I overcame many of my obstacles and learning difficulties. I even entered a spelling bee contest and did pretty well. I had never missed a day until seventh grade in grammar school, so I was honored in front of the entire school in sixth grade for my perfect attendance. So the phonics, I learned how to read, I learned how to spell, I learned how to pronounce big words, I learned how to do math, I learned how to tell time. These are things that children, should be able to learn pretty quickly, but I was having a hard time because I was just so distracted with all this other nonsense going on in my head and in my life. And I did really well at the spelling bee. And then I also didn't miss any school. It was strange. So oddly enough, it was during all the problems that I was facing during these years. So yeah, I didn't miss a day. I don't know, probably because school was like my happy place. I didn't want to be home. There was no reason to be home. Um, yeah. And I never got sick. I still don't ever get sick. I have a really great immune system. But I never got sick. I just never got sick. Yeah, I really never got sick. Um, During these years while playing sports and cheerleading, I had gained a lot of friends. I was usually the hyper one, go figure, so gained the most attention, of course. But I was friendly, warm, kind, and compassionate to others, being able to make friends. So I was able to make friends and get along. And even though I was very insecure and going through a lot of stuff, I had a lot of fun and friends in school. And I wasn't like isolating myself. I wasn't like what they call now the loner, um, which is sad. There shouldn't be any labels like that. Um, but I was able to be somewhat normal child. So what's in a name? So this is page 48. So this is where I changed my name. I had been teased a lot in grade school for my name. It was spelled differently then. The kids would make fun of me so much that even I began to hate it. In the fourth grade, at around 8 years old, I asked my parents if I could change my name. I was called Bashful Shy or Shy Shy, and upper class students would even sing a popular 80s song that had the word shy in it. So my name used to be spelled Shy, Shy, middle name Ann, Ann, and then Jenvey. Um, so they would make fun of me. They would sing that, I forget the song. It's a 80s song. It's Shy, Shy, hush, hush, I, ooh, Shy, Shy, hush, hush, I, and they'd sing that to me, and then they called me Bashful Shy. I didn't put it in here, but they called me Shitty Shy. And like all the upper, like 8th graders, 7th graders, they pick on me. Every grade picked on me because of my name, SHY, Shy. So I hated it. I just hated my name. So, so they would sing it to me constantly, torturing me, laughing at me and my name. I would cry in the bathrooms a lot of the times. To my surprise, my parents supported me, so together with my parents' help, my name was changed to the spelling that it has today, the Cheyenne, the Indian kind of way, and then Michelle is my middle name, which my dad wanted and helped me. So that's my name now. So I asked my father why I was given Shy, SHY, as a first name and Ann as a middle name, ANN. He told me that Debbie, my birth mom, had made up the name Shy, and Ann came from Debbie's mother, Debbie's mother's middle name, which is Mary Ann. So my grandmother's name was Mary, and then Ann, and then her last name. So I was given the Ann part of my grandmother. My father, however, had wanted me to be named Shelby, with Dawn, Dawn, as my middle name. But Debbie insisted on my first name as Shy and with my middle name as Ann after my grandmother, Mary Ann. We changed the spelling completely, combining my first and middle names together, and came up with a new middle name, Michelle. From that day forward, I became Cheyenne Michelle, just like that. When my name changed, so did I. I became a new girl, and everyone started to love my name. People would ask me how I spelled it, and I would tell them. Then they would say how beautiful it was, and I would tell the story behind it. It reinforced strength and courage in me to be my new self. No one had a similar name as me back then. No one had Shy. No one had any of that. Like, it was just straight normal names like Mary, Elisa, Nancy, Jamie, Sarah, and all those are beautiful names, not trying to put them down. So no one had a similar name as me. My parents couldn't find anything with my name on it anywhere when they traveled, like a keychain or magnet. Like, that's also, I didn't feel like no one could find Shy, SHY, and it made me feel bad. It made me, my stepbrother Jason, they could find some stuff with his name on it. Jamie, they could find stuff with her name on it. That was my stepsister, but nobody could ever find anything souvenir with Shy, SHY, and it would bother me. After my new name had been changed, only my family and a few friends were allowed to call me Shy still. I became very strict about it. And when people would call me Shy, I would often correct them quickly to say Cheyenne instead until everyone knew me as Cheyenne. Shy and soon died off. And that is still true to this day. I do not like to be called Shy. I don't appreciate when people abbreviate my name. I want to be said Cheyenne, and don't abbreviate my name. I don't like that. I think that's very disrespectful. I've done it to people and they've corrected me, and I've learned not to do the same thing. So I would often correct them, and I would tell them, no, it's not Shy, it's Cheyenne. And I still didn't really even like my family calling me Shy. I tried to tell them I preferred Cheyenne. I asked them to respect my wishes, but even my close family, like my dad, my mom or stepmom, well, my birth mom too, my grandma, my stepsister, my stepbrother, all my friends, they still had a hard time transferring from calling me Shy to Cheyenne. But I somewhat allowed them to call me Shy, but I didn't like it. But, you got to make peace somehow, I guess, with things. And even 5-6 years ago, before they left my life, when this book was written. They were still calling me shy. So, yeah, whatever. All right, so page 49, subchapter alone. I had always felt like the odd one out. No one else had experienced as much drama as I had with their parents or upbringing. No one, no one else knew or understood the level of chaos I was experiencing on the weekends. Everyone had normal parents and upbringing. Although I had a wonderful set of parents, I still struggled. I felt like I didn't have anyone because I had an alcoholic birth mother who was always in and out of prison, lived on the streets, and potentially wanted to kidnap me to get money for drugs. I had one friend in first grade who became my best friend all throughout those years and is still my best friend. Well, not anymore. Not anymore, but she left my life about 5 years ago too when this book was written. Let's see. She was one of the few friends that gained access and insight into the true horrors of my life. I always felt safe with her, and her family always showered me with the best kind of love. They really did. They were Hawaiian. They were beautiful, beautiful people. She was the same friend that I would ride bikes with and lived across from on the busy streets. So when I was telling you back at the terrace house where my dad and stepmom formed all 5 of us in the family as a family in one house, and we moved into that terrace house, that was when I would be across the street waving to Milani, who was my best friend, and she lived across Fruit, and she'd go up to the top tower of her house and we'd communicate. She'd say, yeah, sure, I'm coming over, and be like, I'm coming over, Milani, or come over. So she was the one that lived across the street. Soon I entered 7th and 8th grade. During 7th grade, I joined the band. This is a not fun story. And I learned to play the flute. Yeah, I played the flute a little bit. It was a day that I will never forget because it was quite traumatizing for me, not unlike many others. So I had been on band for about 2 years. Yeah, I started 7th grade, and then it went into 8th grade, and then I kind of continued it. No, I didn't continue it in high school, but I'm going to see the story there. So it was one day, not like any. So I'm in band practice one day with my teacher, and we were all together playing, and then band practice had ended, and then he asked me to stay, and so it was just him and I in the room. Band practice had just ended, and the teacher had asked me to stay behind in the classroom. He sat me down and came to sit close beside me. Then he attempted to put his hand up my uniform skirt by guiding it slowly up my thigh. So I was in a Catholic school, private Catholic school. We all had to wear uniforms. The boys got to wear pants, and the girls all had to wear skirts. I think culottes, which is shorts underneath a skirt, I don't think those were allowed until later on. So it was just a skirt that I was wearing, and my Catholic dress, white shirt, probably had suspender, like overall dress kind of thing. But yeah, so this starts to happen. He starts to put his hand up my skirt. I stopped him immediately and left as soon as I could, fear making my limbs turn to jelly. So this was like, had to have been 12-ish, and he had to have been in his 30s, and he's trying to potentially molest me. It was crazy. Back then, so I stopped him, and then I ran out. So back then, my sister and I would walk to each other Back then my sister and I would walk to my other grandma's, which was my grandma L's, which was my stepmom's mom. We're not using last names. So we would walk to my grandma L's house, which was, so Our Lady of Victory used to be on Princeton and Princeton and West. Princeton and West. Yeah, Princeton and West. So OLV is no longer there. Our Lady of Victory is no longer there. But we would walk down Princeton and we would cross the street of West. And then we would go into that neighborhood just before Fruit. And then we would make our way over to Brown Avenue. Brown was where my grandma L lived on. So it was just not even a mile, really, like quarter mile, half a mile. And so we would walk to school or walk to her place after school every day until our parents picked us up around 5. So this was during one of our daily routines after I potentially was almost molested by my music teacher. Me and my sister are walking and I'm pretty quiet. I'm not myself. So it was our daily routine. I had mentioned nothing to my sister then. By the time my father came to pick us up, he was able to tell that something was wrong with me. So my dad really knew me very well. And he knew straight off the bat that something was wrong with me. I finally told him about what had happened in the music room. He got furious. So he went to the principal the very next day. He demanded that the music teacher be removed immediately after telling him what he had tried to do to me. The principal took immediate action and removed the music teacher. So this was an incredible moment for me that somebody had actually stood up for me. I had told the truth of what had happened to me by some adult. And for the first time, really, somebody was standing up for me. And it was the first time that I really spoken about something awful happening to me, because I was always quiet, pretending like none of the bad stuff was happening. But this was something I couldn't not tell my dad. So I was thankful and relieved that everyone actually believed me and protected me for once. Just like that, 8th grade came and went. The year 1991 rolled around, and I graduated from grade school. A new future was unfolding for me. I then went on to attend a private Catholic high school, San Joaquin Memorial. Things were about to change for me. So now we are into chapter 3. Chapter 3 is loaded. It's actually broken into 2 parts because it is so intense. So this is going to be a long duration of watching YouTube podcasts about chapter 3, because this is going to take a while to get through. It talks about my freshman year. It then goes into sophomore year, junior year, senior year, and then it goes into me going into college at Fresno State. It talks about all of the different things you go through in high school, the peer pressure. I get my first boyfriend. I lose my virginity. I start getting into drugs. And then part 2 of chapter 3 is where I get really deep into my addiction. I explain all of that stuff. I start getting arrested. I start going in and out of rehabs because I started getting hooked on heroin. And then I get arrested, and then starts to get better as I got help. So I'm not going to dive into chapter 3. You just kind of got a fresh glimpse of chapter 3. Chapter 3 is titled Tangling with Demons, because literally throughout my whole entire high school, I battled so many demons between my birth mom, my grandfather, the drugs, the peer pressure, everything going on in my life. And then it goes into part 2. So this is quite a long chapter. Let's see. And then it has fun pictures in the middle. There's fun pictures. I love the fun pictures. Fun pictures are page 120 through 125 if you want to take a sneak peek and some pictures. I always like pictures in books. But let's see, part 2. Where's part 2? So part 1 of chapter 3 takes us from page 52 to 74. And then, I'm sorry, chapter 3, part 1 takes us from page 52 to 74. Then chapter 3, part 2 takes us from 75 all the way the pictures to 119. So this is going to be a loaded chapter here. Again, use safe space for yourself because this is not an easy chapter to go through. But we're going to do it. So we're going to get out early. It's always fun to get out early. So I hope you have a wonderful Saturday. It's starting to get warm, but fall is happening soon. I just had a lovely birthday on the 9th. And there's some future birthdays that are coming up here in September because September is like the month the babies are born because everybody was keeping warm in the winter. You got nothing better to do, right? That's what my dad would always say. You got nothing better to do in the winter, so you might as well make babies. So happy birthday to all the September babies, all the Virgos. I hope you enjoyed this session and see you next time. Oh, sorry. Our next session, I should say, our next session would be September 16th. September 16th at 7 p.m. So Tuesday, I think that's Tuesday. Sorry. I switched it. Yeah. So Tuesday the 16th at 7 p.m.